These are the supplies you will need to make the sunflower patio stone. First of all, certainly a patio stone. This is a round one, but you could use a rectangle or a square. But for purposes of recreating the one that you saw earlier, I'm going to use a round one. Also, you're going to need some brushes. I have a variety of sponge brushes, which is nice for a larger area, and these really inexpensive little wooden handled ones. Some artist's brushes, any variety that you can find. You do not need to spend a lot of money on these brushes, certainly. It'd be great if you have some around the house, but if you don't, just pick up some cheap ones. You're just painting on this stone, so you don't need anything real special and expensive. Also, you're going to need some paint. Now, I use a variety of paints, and I'm not too fussy about them. There are some that would say you probably need to use something like this patio paint, which I can get at a Michael's or a Hobby Lobby type store, but I don't necessarily believe that they hold up any better than anything else that I use. These are just acrylic paints that I find, once again, at the hobby stores, such as Michael's or Hobby Lobby. These are all different brands, different types. I don't find that one is particularly any better than the other. And also, you could use these. They are what I call the oops paints at Home Depot, where they have mixed up something and someone is not happy with the outcome, and therefore they are put on the shelf at a discount price. I end up getting these for, oh, this was 50 cents, and there's a lot of paint in here, so consider looking for those. Other thing is that I just wing this when I do these. I just get my paint in there and do my sunflower. But if you are not confident with doing that, and maybe this is your first time, or you don't have a long history of sketching or drawing, etc., you might want to print one out from your computer, something like this, and make it big enough to cover your stone, or at least just get the idea from this on how to draw one. And if you do make a larger one to cover your stone and you feel that you need to trace the image on there, you could always put a sheet of carbon paper underneath your drawing. Let's assume this is a large one. You could put it there, and you're going to trace over that with either a sharp pencil or a stylus. This is a great tool to have, and this you would want to have anyway for doing the painting of this sunflower rock. It's usually a little metal piece on each end with a ball and two different sizes of that. Two other supplies that you need to complete this sunflower patio stone or rock, whatever you want to call it, are this Sharpie pen. It says fine point, but it's quite large. It's not a tiny little micro fine, but you'll be using this to line the stone with to kind of complete it, sort of like putting a frame on something. And then this other is the varnish. You do not need to use this. This is a satin outdoor water-based. Any kind of a nice spray varnish will do. If you like glossy, get that. If you like matte finish or satin, get that. But some sort of a spray for this rock. Okay, we're going to start our painting with the blue. That's the background. You're going to start with the furthest thing back first and then build on it. And in this particular instance, I've chosen just a nice sky blue for this. And I'm going to pour a bunch of paint of the blue out just onto a piece of paper. Just use a scrap of paper. I think this one is something like a parchment paper or a wax type paper, but don't be fussy about that. Just put it on any scrap of paper. Get your brush real wet with the paint and just start painting. I'm going to do the sides first. I have this elevated with something underneath it to prop it up so I can actually get to the bottom of the stone. You'll get the idea. So you're just going to keep painting and painting and painting until this is done. For this particular stone, I'm going to want to paint up to about in here. This is going to be the background, and the sunflower and leaves will cover pretty much all of the rest of it, so you don't need to waste the paint in going all the way on this stone. Okay, the second color we're going to be working with is green for the leaves. That would be next up in the layering from the sky to the leaves, and then we'll do the sunflower. So I'm going to just take any old green. This one happens to be Americana brand, and it is Hauser medium green, but just pick any green. Shake it up real well. Put a bunch of it on your paper, and once again, any old brush will do. Now, I had said earlier that you could just wing it and just do the leaves on here, which is what I'm going to do. Or if you feel that you need something to steer you in the direction of making this look like a sunflower and leaves, you could copy something off of, let's say, a coloring book or the internet or whatever for some design for your sunflower, and either draw it on there or trace it on there. So I'm just going to wing it by putting some leaves. I'm just going to do it like this. And don't forget, this will all be covered by your sunflowers as we get those on here. I'm just going to do it like that. Get plenty of it on there. Don't be too cheap with your paint. There, that's all there is to that step. So let's let that dry. In the meanwhile, I'll go wash out this brush and we'll be ready for the next step. The next step for our sunflower patio stone is to paint the leaves of the sunflower. I have a gold color, anything kind of a yellowish gold will work. This is Accent brand acrylic country colors, and it's Harvest Gold, actually Golden Harvest. That's what we're going to use for the sunflowers. Put a bunch of it on the paper. And again, I'm going to be winging this, but if you want to trace them on there or sketch them on, that's fine too. So kind of get them just down. Keep in mind that whole big center circle or oval is going to be covering the whole middle part of this, but you want them to come down pretty far. There. Now you've got your sunflower leaves painted in. Again, and I'm going to keep saying this for every DIY I do, don't worry about perfection. All of these leaves do not look the same in nature, and they shouldn't look the same here. And if you skipped a few little spots in here that you can see through, don't worry about it. That's just going to add texture to the leaves, which all of them have anyway, or I should say the petals. I'm calling them leaves, but these are the petals. The green are the leaves. So I'm going to go wash my brush out, and then we will do the last step. Okay, I just said that we're going on to the last step when indeed we are going on to the next step. So the next thing we're going to be doing is painting the center of our sunflower. So find something that'll give you a circle. This is just a lucite template, or a plate, a bowl, just anything that's a circle, and get a pretty good sized one. And then just draw your circle around here, and you'll have an idea of where to paint the center brown area. Now you could just draw this, you could just roughly sketch it or paint it without having any form on there, just whatever makes you happy and whatever your confidence level is in this. We're going to be using a brown. This is a Americana light cinnamon. Doesn't really matter what, just brown. And I'm going to go ahead and just put it right on here instead of on the paper that I usually do over here. This is a pretty good sized area. We can just do that. So paint that circle like that. And I wouldn't worry about even a second coat. I don't do a lot of that on these because the areas where it didn't get, you know, totally filled with paint, I think that just adds texture to it, and that's what it would be in nature. So, and you'll see when we finish this up in the last stages why it's not so important to have sheer perfection. Okay, that's it. I'm going to wash my brush up, and this time I will not say we're going on to the last step. We are going on to the next step. Okay, our next step is going to be to put some dots on here in the center of the sunflower. They're kind of going to be representing that little grid that you see where the seeds are in a sunflower. Now I'm going to use the tip of this paintbrush to dab into my paint and then put the dots on there. Typically I use a stylus when I'm doing dots, but these little balls on the end of here are really too small for an area this big. So with that said, I'm going to use, this one is Ceramcoat Oyster White, but I would grab any white or off-white or cream color that you have handy. And let's just dab a bunch there. And then all we're going to be doing is just lightly stick the end of the brush in there and then come on over here and dab it, and you will get pretty close to circles. And then just continue to do this until, I don't know, I like to do about a third of this or a half of it. I don't like to do the whole thing because I just kind of picture it being with shadows and the sun, and you wouldn't necessarily see them all exactly the same and across this whole center of the sunflower. So I would just do it something like that. Let's do a couple more. And maybe one more there and call that good. So with that, then we're going to now let this dry and move on to the last step, which is going to be to shade these just a little bit. It's not a necessary step, but it's one that I'm going to show you if you decide to do that. So let's let this dry and we'll be right back to do the next step. The next thing we're going to do is add just a little bit of shading to this. It will be real rough, and just to give the idea of a little bit of texture, this step is absolutely optional, but it does add a little bit to it. So what we're going to do is, this was our gold that we used, this darker golden harvest, and then I just chose one that's a little bit lighter, as you can see, and this one is Americana Banana Cream. As you can see, this is the color I used for the petals, and this is what I'm going to use to shade. So just a little speck different. So shake this up a little bit and take that plug out of there and put a little bit on my paper. And what I'm going to do is, on every other one of these petals, I'm just going to add just a little bit like this, and you can do it ever so slight, even with a dry brush, and then kind of shade it down a little bit. This does, as with anything else, does not need to be perfect. It just adds a little bit of texture. It works a little better if your brush is somewhat dry. So I'm choosing every other one, and I'm just going to do one side of it like that. And once we do the finish work on this, and you see the lining, you'll see exactly why it looks a little rough now, but it comes together later. So I'm doing this side just a little bit, again with sort of a dry brush, and you will get the idea as we complete this project. That's all there is to that. And then we're going to do just a little bit on the green also on the leaves. And I'm just going to use this same brush, get it real dry. And I'm going to again show you an example here. This is what we used for the leaves, and this is what I chose for the lighter shading. This was Americana Hauser medium green, and this is Americana jade green. Again, don't worry about the names of these. Just pick up something at the store that's green and a little bit lighter. That is, if you want some shading. This is completely optional, but it does add just a little bit of pizzazz to your design. This must be some old paint here because it's not wanting to come out of, oh, there we go. Now it came out, more than enough. And again, I didn't wash my brush. It's not that necessary. Just get a little bit of green on there and do just a little bit of shading. That's really even enough, just like that. Don't get too much. There. It's that simple, really. See, it just adds a little speck of texture. Okay, what I'm going to do now is wash my brush, and then we are now done with the painting, and we're going to move on to the finishing details that will finish this project. So, with that said, I'm off to wash my brush. Now we're just going to take this outside and spray it with our varnish to get a good seal on it before we do the lining. That's it. Let's go outside, spray it, and we'll be back in and do this. Okay, now I've got the spray urethane, and I'm going to spray this patio stone. And yes, I know you hear water in the background, but that's our fountain. Well, actually, it's a waterfall in a pond. Anyway, you're going to spray this really well on the sides and everything, and the top real well. Now comes what I think is the fun part, the finishing details. I think this is an awful lot like putting a frame on a photo or things like that, where it's the finishing part that really creates a great project. So we're going to start by taking this Sharpie pen. This one says fine point, but it's pretty hefty. And we're going to work from the back up, which would be the sky. There's nothing to do in the sky. The leaves come next. So that would be these green leaves right here. And just come in and outline it like this. Now I'm gonna have to reach up over there to see where else my leaf went. And then, if you want to, you can even put like a little crease down the middle of a leaf the way they would be, like that. And then let's go over here to this one. About like that. Now let's do the petals of the sunflower. We're going to go in, I like to start with every other one. Let's start with the ones that we didn't shade. So this would be one, okay? Let's go in and do it like this. And then now I said every other one, so we're going to jump over there and just go down to where they all meet, skip, go over here, and that's all there is to those. Now let's go in on the other ones and go here, and then bring that all the way down, like that. Now it makes it look like, on these, it looks like those are behind these are in front of those. Does that make sense? I hope. Oh, I see I forgot this leaf right here. I'm gonna go up like that on there. See, it's already starting to look better, I think. And then you can go in and let's do kind of around the center circle. It just kind of highlights everything and finishes it up. And then after that, what you can do is just go in and do some fun things. Like on here, you could just go in and put little hash marks all the way around. Just kind of adds a little bit more to it. None of that is necessary, but I think it adds a little something to it there. And then on these, what you could do is maybe on, how about the ones, I'm just making this up as you can tell, on the ones where we shadowed them, how about something like this? Just go up and do some dots. Like that. Very simple. I'm just making that up as I go. I've done all sorts of things to these over the years. So there. Oh, I forgot I was going to go back and finish this leaf. This one comes way down. So there you have it. And now if you wanted to, you certainly could sign this or do whatever you're going to do. But I want to point out the parts where, see, this didn't get as much paint in here, and you've got some spots that just weren't as heavily painted. I like that look myself because then it gives it kind of some shadowing or texture look here, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I love this. I think it adds a lot of interest, let's say, to anywhere you're going to put it in your yard. So with that said, take this out to your yard and find a really cool place for it. And we are done with this project. I hope you enjoyed it and that you check back in another time for more of my DIY videos.